Hello, Ellie and Zev. Welcome,
Hello.
my
Hello.
friends.
Nice to
As
be
we,
here.
it's good
Yeah.
to have you. It's been a while since we have, or a little while. We took last week off for Powerful Voices here on Banner and Backbone, but today we are back with a new Banner and Backbone Powerful Voices episode with Nick Paro, my good friend and co-host Ellie Leonard, and our special guest Zev Shalev of Narrative, who I've gotten to know over the past couple weeks and months. And Ellie has gotten to know over the past bit of time as well.
Yep.
And he's an incredible investigative journalist. He's put together a lot of work and done some really deep research. And the last time we had spoken, we had all three of us together. I had to rush off a little early on air due to an incident. So before we get into anything, my son is doing okay, everyone. His arm is healing up great. Um, and he is hopefully going to be out of his cast here in the next week or two.
Oh,
So
wow,
he's
that's
doing
exciting.
really well. Yeah,
He must be
he's
Fast.
thrilled.
healing. He's healing really well, and he's very excited to be able to take his own showers and put his clothes on without having us help him all the time because he can't put shirts on over because it gets stuck on the
Ugh.
cast.
Does he have
Um,
lots of nice messages on his cast?
there was on the first one, but they actually cut off his
Uh,
first one and put a new one on, so he
okay.
lost all of it. So
Aw.
he has some messages on it, but I think he's been a little more sparse on this second one. So it's good to see everyone. Ellie, Zev.
Yeah, good
Zev,
to
do you
see
mind
you.
introducing yourself before I hand it over to Ellie, so that everyone in the crowd gets to know who you are, real quick, and then we'll jump into it and have a great show.
Sure, thanks for asking. So my name is Zev Shalev. I do a thing called narrative.org, which is spelled NARATIV.org. I just got stickers, by the way, so if you can see that.
Ooh.
I don't know if you can see that there. It says narrative.org. There you go. In some shots better than others. And I've been following Trump and the war on democracy, as I call it now, for 8 years. It's been a passion project. I'm a CBS News producer is my last sort of big job is doing the CBS News Network morning show. But I gave that up because I thought there was something much bigger in this Trump world that needed to be looked at, and it's been my passion project for 8 years. And Can't believe we're still at it. Can't believe we're still at it, investigating all his
Yeah.
corruption, his wrongdoing, and who's funding him.
Well, it's amazing to have you, Zev. So thank you. And I'm glad you're doing the work that you have been doing, and being able to connect you and Ellie together on that first time, and now get to have you guys back. So Ellie,
Yeah.
Zev, this is really more your show than mine for this because
Uh-oh.
I love adding points in, but I wanted and guiding this discussion. But it's really your insights that so many people are here for because you guys are both really steeped in this and really, really strong, powerful voices that are bringing the truth. And that's what we're here to do is bring the truth, bring light to people protecting pedophiles. And right now, specifically what's going on with, as I've called the PedoPal Mafia. And I'd love your insights and thoughts around Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Curtis Yarvin. I know he hasn't been named in the in the pedophile mafia, but he's in that ilk of human beings, and how it ties into Epstein and what you two may know about some of those connections.
You want me to go? All right. Well, I dug into those. I think it was 6 pages that they gave us last week from the House Oversight Committee. Um, I never take anything that they give us for granted, whether we've gotten it before, whether it feels like useless information. I always just like go through it with a fine-tooth comb because I am under the impression that they're hoping to keep us stupid. They're hoping that we don't look things up. They're hoping that if something sounds academic or legalese, that we won't look through it. And there's a lot of information even in these little tidbits that they're giving us. And so this week we got these 6 pages, and they included one flight manifest that had Adam Perry Lang, which was Epstein's personal chef for 6 years, and he went to the island quite a bit. He is someone who needs to be subpoenaed. He was with Epstein all the time. He went on almost all the flights. And then you had two things. You had the financial ledgers. You had 2 pages of financial ledgers, and you had these itineraries, these emailed itineraries from Epstein's emails. And I don't know who was sending the emails because they redacted who the emails were from. They spelled Jeffrey Epstein's name wrong. They spelled it with 3 F's. But they, I think the big bomb that came out of that was, I mean, and it sounds so innocent, but is Elon still coming to the island this weekend? Just very innocently. So we don't know if he actually went, but we know he was invited. And I had even people on Substack who are, we're all kind of aligned, I would say, probably politically, but even they were saying, well, just because he went doesn't mean he participated in anything. And maybe so, but the guy has 14 kids and he has like a penis implant, and he, you know what I mean? Like
He
he's
does.
not,
A harem of
he
wives.
does, he has a broken penis implant that multiple women have brought up, multiple baby mamas have
Wow.
brought up. Yeah, so it's like
Something I don't. I
yeah,
do
there
know
you go.
that. Thank
Right. Gender affirming care, right?
The
So
most affirming.
except for it's broken. So it's kind of when I'm okay, I just got that. When I think of those things, I don't think of someone who would innocently enter a very sexualized situation and just go there to relax on the beach. And that's
Yeah.
just,
I mean, I don't know if he was, if you ever went to the island. I don't know whether he'd be involved in any of those things. He does have a voracious sexual appetite, no doubt. But, just because he was in the island doesn't mean he would participate in an orgy or whatever it is that we're doing
right.
down there. I mean, Elon Musk was a target of Jeffrey Epstein for other reasons, not just because he was a famous person. Elon Musk was a target of Jeffrey Epstein's because he was part of the tech mafia, because he wanted to get insider information about what was going on in Silicon Valley so that he could pass it on to both Israelis and the Russians. His interest in both the nuclear sciences area and in the Silicon Valley was because of the technology and because of the learnings that they were doing, less about the politics. So there was certainly whether he would have blackmailed them or just funded him or wanted to be in association with him, who knows? There is another, and I'm just trying to find it here, but I can't. It's not right in front of me. But there was another time that Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein were involved at a dinner together. So there's some record of them being at least in the same vicinity before. And there's that famous picture of Ghislaine and Elon, which he claims wasn't real and photoshopped or photobombed. But
Right.
either way, it stands to reason that Jeffrey Epstein would have been very interested in Elon Musk, and that their connection would have been very likely. He had connections to lots of other big names in Silicon Valley, from Mark Zuckerberg to Bill Gates. Any big name you can imagine. Certainly Peter Thiel, we've talked about before, and we'll talk about some more now. But so this guy's it would certainly fit the profile of of a place that he would be invited to, and certainly be a target for Jeffrey Epstein.
I do think, there's a level of innocence, I guess, with some of the people in proximity to Jeffrey Epstein, but like this was 2014, so this was 8 years after he'd been convicted on sex crimes and was a level 3 sex offender and had been accused by 36 underage girls, and not that he wears that on a t-shirt as he walks around, but I'm assuming he would have had some kind of reputation that preceded him when dealing with a lot of these people. And it makes me wonder why someone like a Bill Gates or Elon Musk would put themselves in that circle, potentially knowing.
I mean, absolutely. It's kind of stunning. All the people that were around him during the period after his release is quite stunning. I mean, he was well known what he was in jail for. Now, it wasn't that big a deal in terms of the crime level, but his general reputation preceded him, as we found out from that 50th birthday book as well. So it's certainly, it's not like it would have been a surprise. Certainly, Elon Musk may not have gone to the island. Maybe that was the reason he didn't go to the island, because of the reputation. But it's amazing to me that after his incarceration and after it became known what he was involved in, that people of fairly good reputations around the Hamptons or New York, wherever, found their way to be with him at various social events, and we're quite happy to talk about him publicly. It blows my mind, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something else that I wanted to think about is back to these documents that were released. They released 2 pages of ledgers, and now we know, what is it? Is it something like $4 billion of wired transactions that they're digging up? Is that number right?
I've heard that number from the senator Wyden.
Yeah,
I
Wyden.
I believe it to be true. I think there was a
Yeah.
lot of money being laundered in and out of Jeffrey Epstein's bank accounts into all sorts of ventures. That's how he ran. That's how he did a lot of his criming. You know, there's a lot of his criming was really around money laundering. It was not around the human trafficking. Although we focus a lot on the human trafficking, so that number's probably right. It could be way more, actually.
Okay. And he had quite a lot of bravado about the financial dealings that he did that were very underhanded, because if you look back at some of the older articles about him from the early 2000s, he talks about it kind of proudly, despite other people going to prison basically on his behalf. But so they released 2 pages of these ledgers, and the interesting things, you can go through and kind of add up and do the math, and it's a lot of money coming in and out. But there were 2 unredacted that were payments for $200 each for massages for Prince Andrew, and which I found very interesting, because every young woman who came forward and spoke up said that they were paid $200 to either recruit or to give a massage, and that was the most money they'd ever had. And this kind of validates what they're saying, and it's interesting that they would put massage for Prince Andrew right in their ledger. You would think they would have been more subtle, but again, it's back prior to them thinking they could be caught for anything, and they were probably quite brazen about the things that they wrote down.
Yeah, and a massage could have been a massage for all we know. It's still fairly innocent. Right. But you're right. I mean, now in hindsight, it's so obvious. Everything sort of gets a second meaning, and it's really gross. Really, you think about it, and it's not. I've been reading about Prince Andrew's estrangement again now from the royal family, courtesy of Prince William over the last few days. I mean, that's certainly the rumor around the royal family is that Prince Charles has been trying to return Andrew to the inner circle, but William is now pushing against that, because he just can't understand how that's even possible in this environment.
Right.
It's obviously a big issue for the royal family still, and it's interesting that they would publish that as well, because it sort of must stick in the, it damages relationships, I would imagine.
Right, and British tabloids are just so much. They're so much bigger and more than U.S. tabloids. I mean, and some of their biggest main newspapers in England are actually tabloids. So we think of like the New York Times and the Washington Post. They have newspapers on that level, but they are tabloids, and the royal family works with these publishers to decide what goes out in the headlines. So it's a very I had worked on a project for a film with Harry about 3-4 years ago, and he talked about the level of interaction between the palace and the tabloids, and it's really, really interesting. But what we know about Prince Andrew, I think we've sort of taken the reins, and we've talked about it in the U.S., but just this week they were railing against Fergie in a way that I don't think they have at the level that with Prince Andrew, which I again find interesting. The women tend to bear the brunt, but she, according to Ghislaine and these interviews that Ghislaine gave, had a crush on Jeffrey Epstein, and you can very much hear in Ghislaine's voice how jealous she was and how possessive she was of Jeffrey Epstein, even though they claimed to have only dated for a short period of time, whatever. But she was very possessive about the women who came in and out of his life, and one of them was Fergie. And so it's been known for a long time that Fergie had a crush on Jeffrey Epstein, but it came out this week, and people were just horrified and are ready to cancel her. And I just wanted to be like, yes, she did, but you have Prince Andrew over here. Like, let's focus on Prince Andrew, who was her husband at the time and the things that he did that were actual crimes versus proximity to a criminal.
It's hard to. I wouldn't know how to thread that, except to note that Andrew and Ghislaine grew up together. Ghislaine was a regular at the Palace. They grew up as kids. They had a very long relationship as well. They were dating as well, theoretically. They who knows how the jealousy would have played out there, or whatever jealousy might have played out. But you're absolutely right to point out that she was very protective over Epstein. It's hard for me to tell whether it's because her dad had anointed sort of Epstein as the heir apparent, or whether he was appointed because she had such a crush on him. It's hard to tell, but regardless, it was, she obviously held. She obviously, well, I think she fell in love with him, and it was sort of unrequited from his
Right.
perspective.
I think she was just one of a number. Go ahead.
Thinking about that real quick, though, is we know that Ghislaine met Epstein from the reporting a lot earlier in life than was previously stated or that she stated in any of her testimony. Um, is there any indication that she was trafficked to Epstein, or was it more an actual, like, real relationship that was built up and is as much as I like as much as I don't know if we are willing or even at a point where it could be known if this was true or not, is she one of the original victims who was trafficked to Epstein um, and
It's
abused
really,
into this type of life?
Ellie and I discovered this a few weeks ago, and we were looking at that 50th birthday book, and in there was this remarkable a birthday note from one of the guys at Bear Stearns, who said that he had met that Jeffrey Epstein had met Bob Maxwell, who he was working with, this investment guy Bear Stearns was working with, when Ghislaine was still a teenager, and that Epstein met her, or at least asks if he had met her when she was a teenager. And that really struck a chord with me, because I remember Ari Ben Menashe, who had worked with Robert Maxwell for a long period of time in the Iran-Contra affair, also told me that Robert Maxwell had a sort of an affinity for really young women like Jeffrey Epstein did. And I didn't really connect that with anything until I saw this note. And then I thought, well, if he met her as a teenager and Robert Maxwell had the same sort of inclinations, I don't know how that world works,
Proclivities, things.
Yeah, but if maybe that was part of the thing. I mean, I don't know enough about that world, and it would certainly be shocking. On the other hand, it certainly fits the profile to some extent, and it's hard for me to tell, what the reality is there. But she did meet him at a very young age and was still dating him. She was dating him in the 80s for sure, and she was still quite young then. So it's and he was much older.
And she claims up and down that she didn't meet him till 1991, and her father never met him. That's her story. And in these right, I agree.
Yeah.
In these interviews, she was given immunity, but she wasn't given immunity from perjuring herself in these interviews. But she's not going to get called out by Todd Blanche. She's not going to say you perjured yourself. But she very much did, because we're going through listening to all these, and then I remember you messaged me and you're like, wait, did he say 1976 or 75 or something like that? And I was like, I think he did. And then we went back and found it. And yeah, she would have been a teenager. And she had a very interesting relationship with her father, because she had a lot of brothers and sisters. And she was the youngest, and she was definitely the favorite. She was like the pet to him. His boat was named after her. There were some probably weirder relationship things there. I don't know. I have no details or no evidence of anything, but I don't think it's unlikely. I know her mother was pretty stable. Like, her mom was a pretty stable, like, great advocate for Holocaust history. Like, she did some really, really great things. But I think she was very separate from that life of her husband and the things he chose to do.
I mean, Robert Maxwell was not a nice guy. and I think it was a particularly nice husband either.
Yeah.
So if she was a stoic face, and she was also came from French nobility, I think was part of the connection there. I suspect. I suppose that can't have been an easy marriage.
Right.
He was a womanizer. He was always running around the world. He was, loud and berating to everybody. I'm sure it wasn't different at home. Um, but in terms of Ghislaine and Jeffrey, it's just not. Unless Ari Ben Menashe is completely lying, and there's no really reason to be lying about this note that she met. He met Jeffrey Epstein from Robert Maxwell when when Jeffrey was dating Ghislaine in the UK. So
Right.
there's too much going on to focus people's attention on them having met in at least the 80s. Now this new thing suggesting they might have met in the 70s. I mean, it seems pretty likely that's she's not telling us the truth about how they met.
Right. Which
Yeah.
says more about the where did Robert Maxwell's money go, and how did Jeffrey Epstein end up with some? I mean, that speaks more to that they had a greater
Absolutely.
connection.
You're so right about
Yeah.
that, because that really is the cover story, right? The cover story is they just met in 91. Now, if that's not true, then it opens up a whole Pandora's box of, well, where did you meet? When did you meet? When did Jeffrey Epstein get to meet Robert Maxwell? What was he doing in London all this time with Robert Maxwell? What
and
arms
why lie
deals were they
about it?
involved in?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
like,
and two, if you are, and I'm not playing devil's advocate. I am, but I'm definitely not advocating for her to not have responsibility for her actions. Just so anyone in the audience is clear, we have to be willing to ask the question though: is she a victim too? Was she one of the original victims for Epstein? Like, was this sort of a trade from Robert to Epstein in a way to become business partners? Was he almost sold his daughter to him in a way, as a, maybe not even as a tool of sex,
Like
but as a tool in
a
general
dowry,
to be
right?
used? Yeah. And she is a manipulative liar, which is also a trauma response to being abused your entire life. Is she has been manipulated into protecting Epstein. I don't think she is forgivable for any of for accountability, though we have to be willing to ask, especially if we want to believe people of their stories and survivors. If she's a survivor too and has a story to tell, it may be worth learning about if she was ever willing to get past the trauma of what she might, possible trauma that she might have. Or on the other side of it, is she was a fully complicit victim or fully complicit actor as an adult during it. And both can be true.
yeah. In
Right.
fact, most often likely go together. You do often get
Yeah.
people who are victims of child abuse becoming abusers themselves. It's not.
Right.
It's an important point you're making. It doesn't excuse any of the things that she did, but it certainly adds context to her and her devotion to Epstein, which I have struggled to understand all the time, because it's so long lasting and it's so even present
Yeah.
today,
I
and I
think he
don't
was.
understand it.
I think she visualized him like her father. I really
Mhm.
do. I think that was the connection, is he was like an arm of her father. Her father was gone. But my question with the timing of when she met him is, if it's an innocent meeting that she met him in the 70s, then why would she lie about it? Like,
Mhm.
what's the purpose of lying? If there's nothing behind that, if there's no money laundering, if there's nothing criminal, then there's no reason to say she met him in 1991. So what does that mean? But then also, kind of back to the birthday book and what you're saying, Nick, there's this cycle of women who started out as victims and became abusers in his circle. A lot of them were assistants. Like, if you look in the birthday book and you read these letters from his assistants, like Sarah Kellen and all these women who were they were given immunity during his trial. They were likely people who started out as victims, but never recognized that they were victims.
Mhm.
The letters that she wrote were gushing. I mean, they were gushing, but they clearly showed me that the same thing had happened to this woman that had happened to the other people who consider themselves to be survivors. And so you would have people who had at some point, because they were told to recruit, right? That's how they were started. They would recruit their friends and they make money from their high school buddies or whatever, um, to where they got to a point where they were more active versus they were more victimized. And then, but that was also a threat that he used against them was, if you say something, you've participated in this too, and you will go to jail too.
Yeah, and for many of them, it was still a, even though it's hard to fathom how, but they found it as a career path. They found it as a way out to an exciting world and a different world that they would never have had access to. They did credit him with giving him education, not excusing anything he's done, but or did. But there's an element of a sort of an old school kind of paternalistic old way of thinking of things.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, and the Stockholm syndrome as well. But it's not inconsistent, with the royal family, and it's why I always that alliance between the royal family and Jeffrey Epstein or whatever it was, their relationship is fascinating to me because there's it's just in the way they treat people and in the way they operate around the idea of especially young women as objects in that way, which I thought was very, very similar in a lot of ways, and maybe not that jarring for someone like the king or his brother or anyone else in that milieu who's came out of that world. I don't know if it was that. I think it's sort of that's just how they did things. They probably might still even do things. I don't know.
Right. And I wrote an article, I don't know, maybe a week ago about the restaurant Cipriani, which I had brought up to you, Zev, and how like Epstein is a style of person. There were several Epsteins when you think about like Harvey Weinstein and people like that. And there was this network of young women, especially models, right, brought in through the modeling industry, and these older kind of executives, older white executives. And this was very cyclical. This happened all the time, and especially in the early 90s, right, before we started to standardize how you treat women, how you treat young girls. What are the rules? Where are your parents? Supervision. And so there were probably a lot more victims, a lot more perpetrators than we're considering right now. And again, brought in through the modeling industry, which I'm hoping to dig into next, because that just seems to be this common denominator that comes up and comes up. And it's something where they could bring girls in from usually Eastern Europe, or they could tempt girls who come out of like foster care in the US and say, you're really pretty, you could be a model. What do you say? That was I remember as a kid thinking that would be the greatest thing ever, to be picked up by a model. You know what I mean? Like that was just like the ultimate goal of a 13-year-old girl. So that's something that I would like to dig into more, because I think nobody has investigated the modeling industry.
Yeah, I've been doing a little digging lately too, because it's kind of coming up to where I am in the story of the greatest heist. But I look, this was more than just a couple of people. This is a way of being in New York, and it still is a way of being in New York. These power executives hold a lot of influence, a lot of power. They all know each other. They lord over New York like a mafia group. They all know who they can hire, who they can't hire, who's done someone wrong, or who's done the other person wrong. So there's blacklists, there's all sorts of things, and in and amongst that is this. Is keeping the secrets. You're in the, I used to call it the Citadel, but it's just like you're allowed in the Citadel on one condition, that you don't reveal the secrets of the Citadel. The minute you reveal the secrets of the Citadel, you'll be kicked out pretty quickly. And so that's in terms of access to that group of people, one of the ways in for any girl around the world would have been through a modeling agency, whether it's Casablanca's modeling agency or Trump's or Epstein's, whatever. These were the way these girls would find access to a lifestyle that was vastly different from their own, opportunity to make a fortune, opportunity for fame that would otherwise really be almost impossible to get to.
Right.
So even though it might have been, people might not have said it was about the sex or whatever, coded modeling, whatever. It was about sex too, but it was also a path for everyone to get, for them to succeed as well. And many people who are famous today took that path.
Right. And it's the irony is, if you think of Melania Trump, she probably came into Trump's world through the exact same path as all these girls. Like,
It's one of the only
and
paths that you could get in there. I mean, really,
right.
that the beauty pageants. In the gay world, there's another sort of path that people get in there, but in reality, it always all still revolves around sex. It's all still, it's how, it's what you can do for the biggest names, the most expensive, accounts, the biggest wallets in New York is how you can get ahead.
Right.
So
And go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
before we go any further, one of the things we talk a lot about are the girls because they're the ones who've come forward now as women, the survivors who were girls. We don't really ever hear about boys being peddled through this, the influence campaigns that could have been used in those ways.
Mm.
Do you, either of you, know anything or has anything come out about boys being used in this same way? Because I know folks named in the Epstein files are gay or lesbian or straight. It doesn't matter your sexuality because rape is not about sexuality, it's about power and control. And we know that's really the big thing billionaires and these types of people value the most is power and control. But we don't ever hear about boys being part of this. Do we know if there are
There were
connections there
boys. There were
too?
boys in absolutely, and I think it's almost as high as 20%, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't want to. I don't want to say that definitively. But it's a large number of boys, much larger than you'd think. I mean, in a group of 1,000 people, that's 200 people potentially. Were they? How they were used is I don't know. There's lots of rumors around Epstein being gay himself, that his actual lifelong love was Wexner, which I still am struggling to completely understand. But I think the Wexner group also held an association with Abercrombie and Fitch, and we know that the owners of Abercrombie and Fitch are facing their own legal scandal around this very thing. So maybe some of the boys were there. Some of the boys went through the Abercrombie and Fitch pipeline, if you will. But absolutely, and again, still to today, it's one of the only ways for a young gay guy to get a leg up in the world is through that. It's through connecting with one of these billionaires in New York or LA. It's Peter Thiel, classic example of someone who had for a long time a sort of a bought younger man that was his boyfriend on the side of his relationship with his husband, and he passed away under mysterious circumstances almost a year or two ago. But it's an interesting story on its own and a tragic story on its own. But that's how things roll. I mean, that's how the world is. I don't think it matters whether they're gay or straight. I think women are seen as more victims, even though it's not true that as a young teenager, you can just be equally as traumatized by any of the experiences, and it doesn't make a difference. The gender, really, it shouldn't. And I don't know why we do that.
Yeah,
I feel like at some point Jeffrey Epstein was so sexualized that he didn't really care person, girl, boy, machine. Like, he just didn't care how he got what he got. He just needed to go through the motions. What was it, 3 times a day, I think is what he said. Like, he had to have an orgasm 3 times a day. Like, that was just, like, I don't think he cared how that happened. It would be interesting. There's a couple of groups of people that I'm researching right now from different points in Epstein's life that I believe, have a lot more victims in these crowds. And I'm making spreadsheets of names, and I'm hoping that I get to talk to people. But it would be really interesting if you started seeing boy or male victims come forward, because I think when you deal with a lot of these very powerful, very rich, very white men from New York City who were in their heyday in the 90s when young girls were just like a dime a dozen, they still don't see why that's wrong. They still struggle to feel accountable for those actions, because they probably look back very nostalgically at that time. If you start throwing in that there were boys involved, and you are working with the Republican Party to oppose the release of these files, I think you'll get a lot more people caving because they don't want to go down with to say that they were gay or that they were involved in gay things or they, you know what I mean? We're the Republican Party, we're the party of family values. I feel like they will start to jump ship if that happens. I don't know if it happens. Like, I don't know if people are comfortable coming forward, but I believe you're right. I believe there has to be boys involved. I just don't think that someone who is that highly sexualized would not have would have cared who he was with. And I'm sure there were boys working on, Mar-a-Lago, wherever they were working with him, that he would have come across.
The targets for Jeffrey Epstein were mostly on the Democratic side.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that's who they were really trying to coerce politically. Right. That's not to say there weren't people on the Republican side. I'm sure there were. But in terms of him, there's lots of stories of him getting massages. I'm not sure there's a lot of evidence showing him raping girls. Actually,
having sex, right? No,
yeah,
he just needed.
Yeah. So I don't. It's sort of that's. I've always even the affidavit around I lost her name for a second. The Trump and Epstein victim.
Katie. Yeah, Jane Doe. Katie Johnson.
Yeah, Katie Johnson. Even that affidavit, when you read it, or that I think it was an affidavit, it talks about Epstein not being able to get it up and sort of having to be like it was like Trump who did the raping part of it, and Epstein was not really engaged. I'm not saying not that it precludes he's obviously still highly culpable for all of that, but but it just tells you the kind that he was. The straight part might have been more of an act than we realized because it was just a convenient way. But I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm yet to find someone to tell me, directly that he knew that Epstein was gay, and I don't have that.
So, digging into maybe not the actual sex aspects of it, or sorry, not even sex, the rape aspects and the power aspects of it. Let's get into maybe some of the money aspects because that's where I think really Elon Musk and Peter Thiel tie into it. Is more, I do think they knew, obviously, they would have known and they would have heard, and it would have been painfully obvious or aware to them that this person, that Jeffrey Epstein, was a pedophile and had been charged and credibly accused of it, but they wanted money and influence of some sort. Can either of you talk about some of the money that they have received or could have received from that type of relationship? I know, Zeb, you have experience with Peter Thiel himself, and his use of Palantir specifically. Is something that I would be interested in knowing if there are connections to dirty money going into that company and being laundered through it.
Well, it's a huge question, Nick. The money that I found originally that connected to Peter Thiel to Jeffrey Epstein was through this company called Carbon, which I think I've spoken to you about before. Was a sort of a pretend company for 911 call centers that was going to help 911 call centers identify a caller by matching their information to databases of the government. In reality, it was sort of a surveillance effort by the Israeli IDF's 8200 to surveil Americans. And it was fronted by a lot of Israeli Defense Force 8200 types. And strangely enough, in there was Jeffrey Epstein, Peter Thiel, and Ehud Barak amongst the investors. And that's the first sign of their connection that I found. But I know that over the years, Thiel has invested heavily in Epstein's projects, and maybe vice versa. I think vice versa. And I'm yet to dig into some of the stuff about Palantir. Look, Palantir was first funded by the CIA. It was funded by In-Q-Tel. So, was it In-Q-Tel that did Palantir? I think so. Yeah. Am I right there?
I don't remember on the originations of Palantir. I just know that they got Peter Thiel and I think Curtis Yar. No, I don't know if Curtis Yarvin was part of it.
Yeah,
I'll look up the.
Peter Thiel was not part of. I'm sorry, Peter Yarvin was not part of Palantir, but I know that Palantir is also connected to all these intelligence agencies, obviously, because it does a lot of work for them, um, and it's very similar in a lot of ways to a previous, to the promise system that people had used and spoken about so much in the previous incarnation of the scandal way back in the 80s. I'm not sure what the question was. Ask me what the question was, but the
Um, are there? Have you seen or know or noticed any finance connections between Peter Thiel's other organizations, such as Palantir, and say Epstein's money either going to and or from other organizations such as the IDF or the Israeli like Mossad or back to the CIA, because there have been rumors about Epstein being part of the CIA or agent or intelligence agencies, and it seems very convenient that somebody who became very, very close with Epstein through monetary funds like this at times and receipt back and forth would not have used that money within a company like this.
they were very associated with each other and associated with the same network. I mean, it's hard to imagine a world where Donald Trump or Jeffrey Epstein existed without Peter Thiel, without Elon Musk. Those things are all very connected, and they represent different types of interests, but they're all an interconnected network at the end of the day. So, is there any evidence of a lot of venture funding for sure? I haven't dug into the details a lot, but it certainly came up. Didn't Epstein's lunches with Thiel form part of the latest release?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they were lunching or double lunch or early breakfast, whatever it was.
They were having second breakfast together.
Yeah, I love the second breakfast thing, Ellie.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, you're lucky to get one in some parts of the
Little
world.
hobbits over there.
Yeah.
You can get two breakfasts.
Yeah, right.
No. So I don't know the answer to that question to answer it fully enough, but I know that they're interconnected, and there's a lot of money that pours through that network, and this is how we got here. We got here by the Iran-Contra scandal and the sudden financing of covert operations through criminal efforts. I mean, that's sort of the original crime. That's the original sin that opens up to the deep state and leads us down to the path to where we are, and that involves all these characters over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think before you go in, one of the groups would be Valar Ventures. They're so into this fucking Lord of the Rings thing over here with all of this. Valar Ventures.
I've heard them. I've heard of the name. Can you spell that for me again?
VALAR Ventures.
Interesting.
And the Valar I believe, were the elves. And living forever. And the Palantir is the all-seeing eye that is corruptible by powerful magic, which powerful bad magic, i.e. Teskriel and Palantir and Peter Thiel and a death cult.
Right.
Yeah, the Valar were the gods. So very high ego going on with the naming.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to look that up because it reminds me of another name, but I don't want to say it out loud until I've double checked this. But there's absolute. I've heard of that name in terms of the funding of these organizations. This is a lot of old money as well. A lot of traditional money that flows through Peter Thiel, flows through all these other people in this network. There are many famous names involved in Epstein's financing world. Royal names included.
Yes. So I was just going to say, so I have been very slowly vetting the Black Book because it's very coded. It's a lot of nicknames and misspellings and calling someone Chuck when they're actually like prince of some country. You have to really dig. But 90% of them are financiers. And why anyone would need to know that many people in the financial world globally is a pretty big red flag. But then what I was saying to you is there's a whole lot of shipping and a whole lot of storage and a whole lot of financial. and these things just keep coming up as a pattern over and over and over again. And for a long time, I was thinking, is Jeffrey Epstein involved in the mob? He's involved with Cipriani. Cipriani was involved with like the Gambino and Genovese crime families. But then as I've gone along, it starts to play out like he was his own mob, like he had created his own mafia money system. And something that I don't know how much information we could get, but is to make a list of all the LLCs and these companies that he created to filter this money in and out. Like, was it J. Epstein and Co., I think was one of his bigger ones. And if there's any, I don't know, you guys may know better than me, but if there's any ability to like FOIA financial records, whether it's through the IRS or something like that, to see how money was coming into these little tiny companies that he had, that he used a different, like every building he moved into, he would create a company to own that building, even though it was just him. For every building, new name.
A lot of it is in the British Virgin Isles, and I've got some of that information. I can share that with you. But
Okay.
a lot of it is in the, it's in that world, and that's a little bit harder to track down exactly what the accounting was like there. This is, he was here a mobster. You've got to think of these things, I think, as networks of mobs, and they all, I don't know who's the boss of whom, but he is, if Maxwell got a lot of his crafts from Mogilevich, who was the brainy Don in the Kremlin world of mob, and Epstein was a heir apparent of that, plus he tutored under Adnan Khashoggi, and certainly was aware of all those money laundering aspects. And then he built up his own little operation in New York. Absolutely. I think a lot of that money came out of Towers Financials. I think that's a huge amount of that money poured out of there, as he stole a lot from there and then closed that company, according to Hoffenberg. But, they all need each other. So they all become a network. It's why, especially if you frame it around sort of Russia's intention to destroy American capitalism, destroy America from within, it absolutely stands to reason that you would need a network to achieve that. You wouldn't just have a Jeffrey Epstein. You'd have a Jeffrey Epstein and a Donald Trump and a Jess Staley and a whole bunch of other people lined up to, Mr. Black, Leon Black, to do this for you, because you would want to infect the entire system. You wouldn't want to just infect one part of it. And that's what the evidence leads me to believe, is that the system was corrupted by these people who were getting this easy money, this huge amounts of money from Russia. And then once they were inside, they were able to grow it, because America's a great place. Capitalism is a great place. You can make tons of money if you have some. And then they were able to, turn it into a machine that allowed them to elect the president. And now, could potentially bring down the country if they succeed. I don't think they will, but that's certainly what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, I have to hop off, but I was going to ask one question before I went. Do you think everything that you just said is a greater reason for them to not want to release the files than a sex ring?
100%, because it's still ongoing. I mean, the financial crime is happening in real time. It's happening right now. The whole cryptocurrency thing is one giant piece of this. And that's their end goal of this whole massive heist. So whatever's in those things could reveal a lot about that, could reveal who the networks are, who the players are. And the last thing Donald Trump wants out there is that his entire mob-connected financial network is exposed to the world. I mean, that's end game right there. So I think the women and the survivors are brave to come forward and to take on this battle, and they deserve every bit of restitution that they can get and every bit of attention they can get. And I think their stories need to be told, and absolutely we need to know who victimized them and how they were victimized. I think that's the first priority. But I think from a secondary perspective, we also need to know about these money crimes and what they're doing to America's economy and how much was stolen. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys, stole trillions of dollars from America, and it's each of our, each of us has a little bit of our money that's been stolen by these guys, and maybe a lot of this money stolen by these guys. And look where it's got us. It's this corrupt presidency and this horrific administration. the backs of our hard-earned money, and it's sort of, once you understand that, you're not, you don't view China or Russia as just being like innocent players on the board here, just competing with America. They were part and parcel of all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, Ellie, I know you got to go. So I'm going to
Yeah.
let you hop off. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks,
us.
guys.
So nice to see you, Ellie.
Yeah, it was
Your
nice
work
to
is
meet you too.
terrific. It really is. You do amazing
Thank
work,
you.
and it's done with so much heart and intention, and it's just it's always great and very useful too. So I hope people
Back
subscribe,
at ya.
and thank you.
And
Thank you,
Ellie's
guys.
putting out her book too.
I
So
saw that.
please go read her book.
Yeah.
Her chapter
It's
1 is
fiction. It's just
really
for
good.
fun.
No, but it's great. I think
Still
Substack is a
amazing.
terrific place to do
Yeah.
a book, and Substack is terrific for any number of reasons. But
Yeah.
the book writing is a good one, and I'm glad you're finally getting to get attention to it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you so much, Ellie. I'll let you drop out.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
And thanks, Ellie. Bye. And Zev, I have one final question
Yes.
for you before we close out the show.
Yeah.
And I give you time to let everyone know where to find you, how to support your work. It's come up in the chat, and it's also something that I hadn't really thought about quite as much up until we started talking about it again on the financial side in venture capitalism. Is JD Vance was Peter Thiel's underling. Peter Thiel mentored Vance for years, and they partner close together and owned at one point, and may still own together, venture capital firms, especially ones that buy up farmland.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen any information in your research around a Vance connection in all of this, and money being funneled into Vance through this network of money laundering and mob-like tactics?
Nothing except what you've mentioned around that one farming company. But Vance is not a, he's part of this network. I mean, it's just clearly he and Elon Musk and Thiel selected him for the role. They put him into the vice presidency. He himself is a professional ladder climber. He's absolutely obsessed with money, as is evidenced by his book and power. And so, I haven't found any direct evidence linking him to the broad mob network or the mob criminal activity, but he is who he is. He's thanks for that. It's really nice little thing. But I think at the end of the day he'll be viewed as corruptly as everybody else. We have all these people in this administration are the worst of the worst. It really is becoming plainly evident that we've got some of the most corrupt people in power, and they can't be trusted for anything. I don't trust Vance as far as I could throw him. It's just doesn't strike me as a very trustworthy person.
Not a person worth trusting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a great point to end today's conversation. And I want to make sure people have time to hear where to find you. I've obviously put up your QR code on the screen. So if anyone's following on YouTube or watches this afterwards, on Substack and on through your browser, please go ahead. If you already haven't subscribed to Zev, go and subscribe to him. I'm also going to put up Ellie's link so that it appears in the show notes as well. And while we're going, Zev, how can people find you? How can people support you?
The best way to find my work is at narrative.org. That's NARATIV.org. And it's where I put all my investigative work and also my daily analysis in there. And it's where I do the 5-stack with Dean Blundell. I do the Trump Tourney Tracker with Olga Lautman. I do a bunch of shows with you, Nick, lately. So that's terrific stuff. And it's just I try to make it as forward leaning, and I had Grok do an analysis of my site once, and it said it was rarely wrong and often ahead. And I think that's a good estimate, a good analysis of where we try to achieve, is get you ahead of as much of the news, so the stories are coming well before they do, and allow you to prepare for how to involve yourself in those stories.
Awesome. Thank you, Zev, so much for coming on with us. I'm just
It's a pleasure.
rotating real quick through the QR codes again for everyone who wants to be able to scan. This has been a presentation of Powerful Voices on Banner and Backbone with Nick Paro, Ellie Leonard, and our good friend Zev Shalev. He didn't ask for it, but I will say it anyways, just like our friend Dean Blundell does. Is go give Zev some money, go throw him some money, help support him, become a paid subscriber of his, become a paid subscriber for Banner and Backbone. We are nearing our 100 paid subscriber mark for Banner and Backbone itself.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a big deal.
And we have officially gotten into all 50 states and have subscribers in every state. We have subscribers throughout at least the US and Canada. We love the support from both of our friends, our country and our friends in Canada. But please go give Zev a follow, subscribe, share his work, help him out. Subscribe to Banner and Backbone, subscribe to Ellie Leonard, and subscribe to myself if you can over at Sick of This Shit with Nick. And thank you again, Zev. I will see you again soon. I'll talk to you later. Everyone in the chat, all nearly 800 people
Oh, wow.
or more, just about 800 people who have joined us between all 4 chats. Thank you all so much. Please spread the word. Keep the Epstein Files in the news and what's going on, because they've shut down our government to protect pedophiles, and it's disgusting as fuck. So push back, fight back. Let's reveal the truth. Zev is one of the best at it. Ellie's one of the best at it. Thank you all, and I'll talk to you again later.
Thank you so much, Nick. You're terrific. Thank you so much. And everyone should be paying for your subscriptions too, because we've got to get you to 200 now.
Thanks, Zev. And I'm nearing 200 on Sick of This Shit with Nick.
Uh,
Just about at 150. So please come join me too. I'm happy to get your paid subscription. I'm trying to make this a full-time thing and into a full-time network, and could really use the support to get the word out. And yeah, thank you so much, Zev, and
pleasure.
everyone again. Talk to you all again soon, and I'll see you all tomorrow on Sick of the Show with the opinionated ogre and Jacob Summers.
Sounds fun.
Thanks
I'll be
all.
there. Cheers.
Thanks, Zev.